Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this session. Today, we are going to look at must-do questions in the VARC section from slot 2 of CAT 25. Okay. So, those of you who are watching this space may have watched the part 1 must-do questions. That is slot 1, I mean. Yeah, this is the continuation. We are going to look at must-do questions, must-have done questions. That is, questions you should have done if you had attempted this slot. Okay. Now, what do we mean by must-do questions? These are the easy questions, obviously. But what is an easy question? When we look at okay, I'm just watching the space there in the YouTube channel also. So those of you who are watching this, if you have any questions, clarifications, comments, please do not hesitate to share them with me. Okay, my eyes are on the chat box. Yeah. So for must-do questions, see, the first thing you should understand is in VARC, it is very difficult to agree on what is an easy question or what is a difficult question, because this is a very subjective area, unlike quant, which is much more objective, and the difficulty levels are sort of same for most students. Okay, here it is not the case. However, a big factor that contributes to doability of a question in VARC is readability, right? The question has to be readable. The content has to be easily comprehensible. Hence, be it reading comprehension passage or the other questions, VA questions, the passage per se has to be readable. Again, the options of the questions also have to be readable. If they're very lengthy or complicated options, then it may add to the difficulty level of the question. Of course, we are not denying the fact that in RC especially, there can be easy questions based on tough passages and tough questions based on easy passages. Okay, we have factored this in too. But if a passage itself is really dense, then we cannot classify any question from that passage as easy, because you need to cross the barrier of the passage in order to even reach that question. Okay, what is the purpose of showing you these must-do questions? Well, we assume that those who are watching this space here, those who are watching this live stream, are students who aspire to appear for CAT 26. Whether you have appeared for CAT 25 or not, most of you wish to attempt CAT 26, right? So identifying easy questions is a very, very, very crucial skill for you. Okay, that is the primary reason we are sharing these questions, to help you start thinking on these lines. For those who are going to attempt CAT 26, there is ample time. So you should start thinking on these lines. When you see a question, be it in our aimcats or anywhere else, in your sectional tests, wherever, when you see a question, you should be able to immediately identify it as easy or difficult. Then, of course, when you go through the options, your decision might change, your verdict might change. That is another matter. But the ability to spot an easy question instantly, or even more importantly, the ability to spot a difficult question instantly and leave it. Okay, all these are valuable skills. Okay, enough by way of introduction. I don't see any comments here. If you have any questions for me or any comments, or when I tell you that a particular question is easy, if you disagree with me, all these I'll be happy to note and respond. Okay. Now, I have the whole paper here. I have selected a few questions. I have shortlisted a few questions as easy or doable. Okay, now we have a reading comprehension passage here. This reading comprehension passage, the first reading comprehension passage, is on certain cultures in science. The concept itself may seem a little abstract. However, when you actually go through the passage, it is pretty linear in nature. Okay, these are all factors that make a passage easy or difficult. The language is pretty okay. The subject is science and simple science, not very intricate. And the passage is quite linear as in it flows well. It has a certain structure to it. It is not just an abstract blob where you cannot make out where it starts and where it ends. Okay, so here what they're talking about is certain cultures or certain influences, not cultural influences, but certain practices which the author calls cultures of science. Okay, now the author is talking about two sciences basically here, and what he or she refers to as culture is the influence of instruments. Basically, as we read the passage, we can make that out. Now I'm not going to read the entire passage here. Okay, I'm just going to show you certain questions. So for that, we only need an overview of the passage. Here, astronomy is the first science that the author is talking about. So the author says that initially astronomy was limited by optical light, that is limited by what the eye could see. And then it talks of optical instruments, that is telescopes, and that expanded the scope of astronomy. Then there were several improvements on the telescope, and later on more powerful instruments happened, right? They're talking about, see, Isaac Newton's later improvement, etc. Okay, all these improvements happened, and then today's astronomy has enjoys the benefit of all these years of progress in optical telescopy, and also certain modern trends like radio astronomy have contributed to have expanded the scope of what we can see and understand in astronomy. So how instruments have have affected and have had an effect on astronomy. This is the first part, and the author calls astronomy techno-science. That is, it's an instrumentally embodied science, a science that has been facilitated by instruments. Okay, so that is astronomy, and the author describes this as a receptive science mainly because astronomy is heavily reliant on inputs received through instruments. That is why it is called a receptive science. The exceptions to this receptive part is when humans launched certain interventions like probes to solar system bodies. Then the author moves on to talk about different science culture, and that is in biology. Okay, the science culture of biology here, contemporary biology. Biology also has an instrumental culture related to biotechnology, related to microscopes, right? And microscopic instrumentation, according to the author, is more interventional in style compared to the telescopic instrumentation in astronomy. Now, see, you don't need to break your head over why it is so. Always just tune into the author's perspective. If you're not a science student, if you start trying to think, why does the author say so, you might get confused. The author says so, so it is correct. That's it. But yes, the author has given some explanation also. Okay. Because certain techniques like gene splicing are interventional, according to the author. That is enough. Okay. Yet the commonality is that in both these disciplines, which disciplines, astronomy and biology, these two sciences are highly instrumentalized, and progress in these two sciences was possible only because of constant improvements in instrumentation. Okay, so the conclusion is that these sciences are instrumentally embodied. Okay, but the styles of embodiment differ. And then the author mentions that the last of the scientific disciplines to move into such technical embodiment is mathematics, which only recently started relying on computational machinery. That's it. Okay, this is the passage. So you understood the gist of the passage here, right? I haven't read it word by word now. Let us look at the questions I have shortlisted as easy here. Okay, not the first question, because the options are a little tricky, a little confusing. Here, look at this. Now, if you look at the question, you might get a little scared because the question stem looks big. But the charm of this question is that you can answer the question based on the question itself. You just need to interpret the sentence that is given in the question. Usually, when the quizmaster asks such a question, they say which one is a conclusion to draw from the statement, and then they put just ellipsis there. They don't give the whole statement. Or they say from what the author says in para 3, then you have to go to para 3 and search. What does the author say? Here, the entire statement is given here. If you have sort of cursorily gone through the passage, then you will be able to interpret the sentence without going back to the passage again. So let us see how we do it. Okay. A valid conclusion to draw from the statement that the sciences involved are today highly instrumentalized and could not progress successfully without constant improvements upon the respective instrumental trajectories. Isn't this easy to understand if you have read the passage? What are they saying? The sciences, see, the sciences involved. Which sciences involved? We know the author is talking about only two sciences, astronomy and biology. And the context here is the author says these two are different. One is receptive and the other is interventional. However, in both the disciplines, this is where the author makes this statement. So these two sciences are highly dependent on instruments and could not have evolved successfully without progress made in instrumentation. Very, very simple statement. What is the gist of that statement? That these two sciences, progress in these two sciences has been reliant on progress in instrumentation. That is it. Very easy relationship mentioned here. Now let us look at the options. Okay. The first option is the growth of scientific technologies has led to the embodiment of progress in the trajectories of improvement. Please don't fall for such complicated statements. Some students tell me, ma'am, we will pick the longest option. That is likely to be the correct answer. Guys, careful. Yes, here that may be the case in terms of number of words, but if you look for the most complex sentence, you will not reach anywhere. Growth of scientific technologies has led to embodiment of progress in the trajectories of improvement. What trajectories of improvement? And what is embodiment of progress? No. Growth of technology has led to progress in these two scientific disciplines. They need to state it properly. This statement does not make sense. The use of instruments in scientific trajectories, okay, must be respected in order to see successful progress in them. What does this say? If we respect, this is like saying if you pray to God, you will get something. If you respect the use of instruments, then you can see successful progress. That does not make any sense at all. Okay, you need to interpret the statements properly. Don't just look at the words and say, these match. That is not how you pick answers. You need to think, what is this person saying in this statement? Then you will get it. If you respect use of instruments, then you will see progress does not make any sense at all, right? Highly instrumentalized work in the sciences has resulted in the progressive improvement of scientific constants. What is scientific constants? The author has not mentioned any such thing. Constant improvement is what the statement says. Scientific constant means what? We do not know. And if it is constant, then how can there be improvement? Very confusing and misleading option. Okay, just because they play with words, do not fall for any of this. The option has to make sense. Otherwise, either it is wrong or you are not able to comprehend, so leave the question. Here, all these three options are easy to eliminate because they do not make sense. In both astronomy and microbiology, okay, the author has specifically mentioned microbiology as the branch of biology where technology is involved. Progress has been the consequence of improvements in the instruments they use. See here, very simple. Progress in these two sciences, the only thing may be microbiology, but the author talks of microscopic instrumentation, right? So microbiology can be inferred. And I think the author has used the word also, probably biotechnology is used. I'm not sure if the author has mentioned the word microbiology, but then biology that uses microscopic instrumentation is microbiology. That much inference you have to be able to make. That is all. Okay. Progress has been, so this is the very easy and linear relationship that has been depicted in the passage. Progress in these fields has been a result of progress in instruments. Okay, hence 4 is the answer. This is an easy question, isn't it? If you have any comments, any questions, I'm looking at the chat box. None so far. Please let me know, guys, if you have anything to convey to me. One more question here. All of the following may be rejected as valid inferences from the passage except. Except means what? Which one cannot be rejected as a valid inference means what? Which one is a valid inference? Simplify the question statement first. That step is required. The statement that cannot be rejected as a valid inference is the statement that is a valid inference. So let us rephrase the question as, which of the following is a valid inference from the passage? That is it. That is the answer you have to pick. Now, isn't it simple? Okay. Yeah. Isaac Newton's experiments with reflecting telescopes were the earliest versions of the new astronomy referred to in the passage. For this, you need to have read that in the passage. I did not take you through the entire passage, but no, Isaac Newton's was not the beginning. Okay, though Isaac Newton is mentioned here somewhere in the beginning, Galileo using telescopes, that was the beginning of modern astronomy. Okay, that is mentioned here. It was with his own telescopes that he made the observations, launching early modern astronomy. Galileo was the one who launched it. Isaac Newton's later improvement with reflecting telescopes. Okay, so it is directly written that Galileo was the one who launched new astronomy or modern astronomy. So this is not a valid inference, very easy to eliminate. The author distinguishes between the receptive and interventionist uses of instruments. We just saw that, right? Astronomy is receptive and biology or microbiology is interventionist. That's just what we saw. Let us look at this statement. Distinguishes between the receptive and interventionist uses of instruments in the sciences by comparing astronomy and biology respectively. When respectively is there, you have to be careful. The order has to be correct. Receptive astronomy, interventionist biology. Correct. Valid inference, right? Yes, it's just mark it there. You never know if there's something tricky. Okay, interventionist instruments or instruments that intervene directly in scientific inquiry are different from embodied instruments or instruments that embody scientific inquiry. This distinction is not made in the passage. The distinction is between interventionist and receptive instruments. If you went through the passage, skimmed through the passage, you would easily be able to eliminate this. The advances in telescopy made by Newton with reflecting telescopes allowed early modern astronomers to observe the phases of Venus and the satellites of Jupiter. What does it say about Newton? No. Phases of Venus, satellites of Jupiter, that was all because of Galileo again. Isaac Newton is later. Okay, these discoveries are not attributed to developments or discoveries made by Isaac Newton. So this also is very directly given in the passage. You can easily just go there and check. That is why I have noted that this is indeed a very easy question. Don't you think so? If you do not, please let me know. If you do, please let me know in the chat box. It'll be nice to hear from you. 2 is the answer. Now we are moving on from this passage. Okay. So 2 questions from this passage. Now, see, this may look like an easy question, but this is a heavy application question. Okay. Not going into it, you have to make a sort of far-fetched inference based on application. So I wouldn't call it easy. Just looking at the question, you may think it is easy, but no, it is not based on the passage at all. You need to apply the concepts in the passage, and that also cannot be directly applied because they are talking of various instruments and asking which one of these would not align with the classifications of instruments made in the passage. Of course, milestone is not even an instrument, so that is the answer. However, all the instruments here are very, very different. So I wouldn't call this an easy question, okay? Unless the reason the quiz master also had in mind is that the milestone is not an instrument per se. Okay. Now, here, this passage is on, yes, it is related to AI. It is on the, yeah, certain challenges related to AI. Okay, biases. This is a topic which keeps coming up repeatedly, right? So, biases caused by AI algorithms. The author talks about OpenAI, the author talks about ChatGPT, and repeatedly finds out that certain types of errors, stereotypes, biases, etc., are prevalent, and that ChatGPT has a certain formula it follows to correct mistakes. Okay, and that can often go wrong. For example, here it says that when the author prompted Microsoft's Bing image creator to produce a picture of engineers and space explorers, it gave an entirely male cast of characters, which is very, very, very far from the truth. As you know, when you look at space explorers and engineers, there are almost as many women as there are men. So ChatGPT is prone to such biases. Again, it corrected the author's father's perfect Indian English and changed it into American English, but where there was no need at all. So all these biases have been mentioned. Then again, ChatGPT seems to have a very positive view of OpenAI CEO, also other big tech companies. So it is basically about all these biases. Okay, fine. Now the question I have marked here. Okay, for this you need to have read the passage, of course, but by now you would have understood that the passage is a critique on AI. Nowhere does the author really praise AI. Okay, it is about the no. The author does not say it is useless or anything. The author does say that we are dependent on AI. However, the focus is on the biases and prejudices and stereotypes in AI. Okay, so now if you look at that, then which of the author of the passage is least likely to agree with which of the following claims? Least likely to agree with. Okay, here it says the neutrality of AI is conducive to critical thinking. No, first of all, the author does not really say that it is neutral. However, in some places, the author does say that it has a cultivated kind of neutrality, but nowhere does the author say that it is its neutrality leads to critical thinking. So here what it says is that, see, I how the product's veneer of collegial neutrality. Veneer here is a covering, like a mask. Okay, it's appearance of colleague being neutral like colleagues, could lull us into absorbing false